Thank you. Okay, so good morning. So um, just a couple housekeeping items. If you're not talking, place yourself on mute, or we probably will, just to keep the noise down. If you're speaking, please introduce yourself, your company, and your location. Use the chat box if you have questions. Tracy and I will be monitoring it. Remember that these are discussions, not debates, and please, give everybody an opportunity to express their point of view, and please participate. It's your time to actually ask questions and get involved. And that's it. So I'm going to turn it over to Art.
Well, I want to welcome everybody to today's meeting. Today, we're going to have Michael McDaniels with Shriver Insurance is going to tell us what's happening in the insurance industry with most of us renewing the end of this year. It's going to be important to get an update on what's happening in the industry, where rates are going. So we'll look forward to that. After that, Paul's going to update some of the city updates, which I don't think there's too much, but there's some city updates. For the board, I'd like to introduce you guys to the board members. We have Kaya Armijan with Flash Limousine, Beth Cox, Cox Livery, Paula DiBiase with Chicago Coach Works, and she's our secretary and executive director. James Jordan with Lux, Lynn Kaffis with Galaxy, Michael McDaniels with Shriver, Jay Pearson with Century Business Solutions, Tracy with Windy City, Brian with Epic Limo, and I'm Art and with Pontarelli. That's it. Michael, you want to take over?
Sure, I will jump in here. First of all, I'm Michael McDaniels from Shriver Transportation Insurance. We are located in Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois. Been around since 1963 as an insurance agency. We have specialized in public transportation insurance since 1963. Currently, the insurance world is still as chaotic as ever. And it's changing and evolving, if you will. I'm starting to see a lot more underwriters coming back with one of the biggest I'm seeing is the drivers, chauffeurs, if you will. A lot of people in the last 18, 20 months have, had a serious turnover in drivers, chauffeurs, CDL drivers. And we're getting a lot of pushback or feedback from our underwriters. Doesn't matter what company you're with. They're all harping on the same thing. How are you retraining these drivers? That's a big thing right now is what are you doing with your drivers in your driver training program? Some people in the sedan market, they're able to just pick up, Tommy off the street who's never had any experience because they were looking for a chauffeur to get behind the wheel. I think we're kind of getting towards the end of that, but the number one issue, it does seem like drivers. I think Tim's on here and Tom's on here. They're probably hearing the same thing with their customers and their underwriters. The chauffeurs are the number one issue here. I know everyone wants to hear about rate reductions. That's very few and far between still. We're still seeing pricing go up. There's a lot of reasons for that. Here in Illinois alone, we've lost a handful of insurance carriers in the last 20 months or so, taking into account Echelon, PMA, Protective, Northland, good, thank you, Tim. Tom, if I missed one, let me know. So we've had a reduction in the capacity for underwriting, compounding the fact with everyone going through COVID. And it's been a crazy time. Insurance companies from everyone out there has tried to do some sort of COVID program to assist in the last 20 months of where we're at with laying vehicles up or adding vehicles for a day, taking them off for a day. But I think just from a very high level approach here, everyone should be looking at their insurance on a yearly basis. Doesn't mean you have to shop it every year, but you should probably want to see what's out there. Are you happy with what you're paying? No one is, I know that. Are you happy with the service you're getting from your insurance carrier and broker? I know it's been a trying 20 months. I've had several failures just as far as trying to keep up everything. And it can be very difficult. I think my team and staff have done a fantastic job. However, I know we have dropped the ball on a handful of occasions just from trying to maintain the level of transactions we're doing We're not a very transactional business. A lot of times we will talk to you once a year, we'll bill you, and that'd be it. The last 20 months, we maybe touched the same file 47 times or talked to someone, 80 times just to add a vehicle for a day, take it off. So it's been trying but I think we're getting back to where everyone is back to somewhat full capacity of operating if they can be. I think, again, a lot of people can operate a lot more vehicles if they can find the proper chauffeurs. So again, I'm gonna harp on that, but you should be starting your insurance cycle probably about 90 days out. Items you're gonna look for, you're gonna have your current fleet list, obviously, list the year, make, model, the value of your vehicle. If you are operating a stretch limousine, the length of the stretch, who was the coach builder who stretched it? Very important items to have. Some insurance companies are starting to come back with age restrictions on the stretches, depending what carrier you're going with, but there could be some age restrictions on those stretches. Same thing if anyone here operates motor coaches. We're 20-year-old buses are workhorses, I get that. But from an insurance standpoint, some insurance companies do have issues with the older equipment. Your business may have changed dramatically from what you're doing in 2019 to what you're doing now. In 2019, you may have been all corporate work, just going to the airport or road shows. Now you might just be doing, a totally different avenue of what you're doing. So it's important to know from a risk standpoint, what you're doing. We, as brokers, Tom, Tim, myself, we can't keep track of everything you're doing and your changes. So we ask that you were part of the insurance process. What does that mean? I've talked to a handful of people who are new customers to me, and when I try to go over the insurance application, their mind's blown, like, I didn't know these questions were out there. And yes, we are asking a lot more questions right now, and that should be a good thing. When they're asking these questions, it's they want to get a better grasp on the risk that they're taking on as an insurance company. Because in some cases, you might be carrying $5 million of liability. Some might be 350, but these insurance companies are putting out $5 million each and every day that you have a policy with them on each claim, each vehicle you have. So we are getting more and more questions. I have found, and Tim and Tom, chime in if I'm wrong here, but we've had good luck getting some of these questions answered and showing what we're doing as far as driver training, getting the results or getting the answers that underwriters want. They have been more agreeable to adjusting their underwriting requirements. They know that if you're trying to run your business, you're trying to shift and shape, the insurance carriers want to be partners with you, but they want to know what you're doing. So if you're used to just being a limo operator, that's great, but now some people might be taking those livery vehicles and doing non-emergency medical transportation. That's fine, but we have to know because those are two separate risks and price them accordingly. So we are going to be asking a lot more questions. I think it's for the good. I don't, some people do have hesitation providing information. I know your time is valuable, as is ours, as is the underwriter's time. I get a question quite a bit. Well, should I shop my insurance every year? It's a tough question to answer from an overall standpoint, I think the answer would be yes. But on an individual basis, if I'm talking to Larry or Art or Len or Kaya, is that look at your own individual risk and what you're doing. If you know you're in Chicago, we know that there's a handful of carriers who are not going to write you just to start because you're in Cook County. So we have a limited amount of insurance. We have 1 to 4 vehicles. I mean, there's different size capacities, 1 to 5, Philadelphia wouldn't look at you. If you've got 5 to 100, the insurance world opens up a little more for you. So there is some things that you can do to help us help you get better rates. I would say be active in what you're doing that maybe puts you above the normal operator. Do you have all your driver training? Do you have all your signed off on? Do you do weekly, monthly, quarterly safety meetings? Are they all attended? Are you logged in and registered for these things?
And that's something I was going to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Stop muting me, Paula.
I didn't. It was an accident. I'm sorry.
No, that was something I was going to say, Michael, and on that, as far as lowering your rates when it comes to, the chauffeur training, get it in writing, put it in writing, make sure that they are signed off and have a documented process, because that documented process can quite literally save you 5 to 10% on some of your policies because you have it written down. It is amazing how much having a written down policy changes what the underwriters will write.
And you gotta follow what you got written down.
Yeah.
So documentation is key. A few other things here to keep in mind here, as I come back here to 2019, you may have been doing only corporate work. You may have picked up new contracts. If you're not involved in this insurance process, we as a broker might just assume that nothing's changed and we missed out on some contractual obligations that you were not meeting because we're not aware of the contractual obligations. For example, maybe they need higher insurance limits. You carry 1.5 million, this contract might require 2 million or 3 million. Sexual abuse molestation is starting to be popping up across several different contracts, if you're working for schools, some corporations, I'm seeing that in. So I like to tell my customers, treat us like your lawyer. We're there to advise and counsel you, but if we don't know what you're doing, we can't give proper advice and counsel and maybe maneuver what we're doing. So contrary to popular belief, Tom, Tim, myself, other brokers out there, we're not the bad guys. People think that insurance is a necessary evil, and to some people it is. They look at, I never have a claim, I'm not paying these high rates. I bring it back to the most basic principle I can think of, is that the premiums of the many pay for the losses of the few. And we want to have a big pool of quality operators who can control their risk, who are doing best practices in their field. Now, what's best for Tim maybe in Kansas might be different here than in Chicago, because might have different requirements. So, I don't want to pinpoint what Tim is doing or what Jose is doing or Gary's doing, because I don't know where they're at and exactly what they're doing. But from a broad level, we want to document everything you're doing. We want to show that we are being best in class. But the drivers and chauffeurs, I know it's tough right now for the guys with the sedans and stuff like that, or it's even tougher for guys with CDLs because they're hard to come by. But I am finding it somewhat difficult trying to hire Timmy off the street who maybe has no prior experience. So I have received questions in the past. Well, if Timmy was a rideshare driver, does that count? To some insurance companies, it does. I didn't poll every insurance company I work with, but I would say for the vast majority of our insurance companies, if you were a rideshare driver over the past 2 years, we can use that experience so we show you have experience driving in the commercial field. Just because you're a mom of 4 kids does not mean you have chauffeur experience. Now, my wife probably thinks otherwise, as do I when I take the soccer practice, but it's a tougher job, trust me, I know that. I think the overall scope here is that, kind of like in any relationship, communication is key. And if Paula were to call me and say, hey, I'm going to think about doing all non-emergency medical, well, I'd say, Paul, that's great, but we should look at different insurance programs because your current program is not set up for that. So don't be afraid to run by your broker ideas you might have. I've had some doozies in the last 20 months. You would thought that was mundane thing, that trucking seemed like it was a no-brainer. That was the easiest thing we've seen. We've seen people want to shift to non-emergency medical and buses. I don't know how that would possibly work, but it's out there. And another thing would be, what are you doing to find drivers? Are you working on, having your current roster promote or recruit other people they know? It's a fine line. If anyone wants to chime in here, what are you finding out? Are you getting pushback from your insurance guys about trying to hire new drivers? I don't know. I know we are seeing quite a bit of that. Has anyone here actually had tough times adding drivers?
So I actually talked about this with Paula. One of the craziest places that I've been able to find chauffeurs is on Nextdoor.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's something that is going to go to your local area. When you make a post or you comment on someone's post, it's going to be someone local. You're not, with Facebook, you can set up a geographical area or whatever, but it doesn't always work. Nextdoor is designed for the people that actually live in your immediate area. And I've gotten some great response. Now, of course, I'm also out in Kansas, where things are a little bit different than they are in Chicago. And for me, it really hasn't been any sort of problem for me to add these new chauffeurs to my policy, but also, you know, they're all non-CDL vehicles. They are older people. You know, a couple of them are retired, one of them semi-retired. And it goes back to, here is my training process that I go through. I've got PAX training, and then we do road training. We deal, you know, we go to the FBOs, we do more, you know, more of that, and it's all documented. And that has really caused, you know, my carrier, and I'll tell you who my carrier is, Philadelphia. I haven't gotten any pushback from adding new chauffeurs because of the processes that I have in place. I also will say that, you know, my family has a company, and I just wrote their policy here a couple weeks ago. And, you know, because they don't quite have the same procedures and policies like written down like I do, I know that their general liability, their costs were, you know, quite a bit higher than what I pay because of the procedures that I have put in place over time.
Tim, that's a great point, because I get this phone call quite a bit. Well, my buddy is insured with the same company I am, and he's paying less than me, or I'm paying more than him by, you know, $1,000. And that's probably very true. But just because you guys are neighbors and do the same thing, you guys have different risk characteristics. If your drivers are older, meaning, you know, they're maybe above 65, if you've got a large chunk of your drivers over that age, or on the younger side, you know, those and their driving records, that's going to play a key part into it.
Exactly.
So, you know, I don't have a magic 8 ball. Tim, you might. Tom, you might. But I can't predict what's going to happen over the next 12 months.
I do, but I drained all the fluid out of it. So, really
but I do think that if you're doing best in class practices and you are actively engaged, if you're starting the process about 90 days out, hopefully, you're not going to be running into these last minute proposals. I can tell you personally, I've had so many of these in the last 6 months where you start 90 days prior, and here you are Friday night before Saturday, and you get a quote at 8 o'clock at night. Or it's driving down the last minute, and trust me, it's frustrating. I don't know if you can tell, but I have quite a bit of gray hair, and I've lost quite a bit in the last 20 months from the stress, as I'm sure you guys all have as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I think for the most part, those who are still standing, kudos to you. You probably had to do a lot of pivoting, changing, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears you put into your company the last 20 months or so. And I do commend you for that. I think that you guys have all shown by joining this meeting today that you want to try to learn or better your company by picking up a couple of tips or communicating with your other peers in your field. I hope that, you know, if you could start this process 9 days prior, if you can get all your information, loss runs, you know, document your driver training. If you have any new contractual obligations, let us know, communicate with your broker. Maybe you don't want to shop. Maybe you're happy with company A or company B or company C. That's also fine. Just communicate what you want to do. Work with us, we'll work together, or at least I try to work with my customers on a dictator. So we will communicate, bounce things off each other, and see kind of the path we want to take. I can't tell you if pricing is going to go up or down next year. My guessing is going to continue to go rise for another 12 months or so, maybe 24 months, just a take I'm getting. Just like you guys, insurance companies have not had the best of luck the last 10 years. They're actually not operating on a great loss ratio. But, you know, we're all trying to stick in there. We're trying to work together. We're all on the same ship doing different jobs. It's very imperative that you all work together, whether it's you work with me, another broker, Tom, Tim, whoever it is. Just work and communicate with your brokers. We all want the best for you. And I can't really say more than that right now, except for let's take some questions.
I think
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, don't be afraid to actually have open, honest communication with your broker. I mean, you know, we've heard some bizarre shit, and whenever you come to us, we've probably heard it before. And quite honestly, you know, we have some resources that we can guide you to help you get, you know, set up, especially on the risk management side, and even your carrier. I mean, I don't know, you know, who here has Philadelphia, but you know, you go into Philadelphia and they have all sorts of risk management stuff within their portal as a policy holder to train chauffeurs and, you know, how to handle certain things, and, you know, and all that stuff. Use it. It's there for your benefit. If you use it, it helps reduce the chance of claims. It helps reduce the policy premiums that you're paying. Use the tools that are given to you.
Does having an off-the-shelf software program like PAX, is that recognized by the industry as good training?
It's a good question.
Oh, I don't want to say it's recognized by the industry, but you have a bucket here, and you have a lot of good things you're doing, maybe some that are average and some are lacking. So you're never going to see, at least to my knowledge, you're not going to see a line item on your insurance quote that says you're getting a 4% reduction because you use PAX training. It's multitude of factors go into it. And yes, they do look at that, but you're not going to see because Tommy uses this, he's getting 4% discount. You're not going to see it in that way. But it is figured into this stuff.
Quite honestly, the truth is that when we go to a carrier, they have, you know, hundreds of underwriters that they use. Some of them are third-party underwriters, and the likelihood of them not knowing what PAX is per se is going to be very, very small, because we are a small industry. But having that program and stating that you have that program in place will help with the underwriting process.
Tim, where are you finding 100 underwriters at?
As a big whole, Travelers.
Okay. I think about a dozen or so in this field, but okay. I
Yeah,
get your
no,
point.
but
Can we
Yeah.
spend a minute on the sexual abuse policy and all that? Because I recently talked to a colleague of mine who is running Medicare in Chicago, not in this group, and actually had a sexual abuse claim filed against one of his drivers. And it was simply had to do with the positioning of the strapping system to put the person into the car. They touched them inappropriately, not intentionally. It seems to be, and after talking to him at length, it seems to be becoming more prevalent that if you are doing any kind of wheelchair ramp type work, Medicare, that kind of coverage is becoming important, because this was completely innocent. The guy that did it was simply trying to get the person safely strapped in, but it was perceived as sexual abuse. So now he has run out and bought a policy that for going forward. But I think that's kind of important for anyone who is working with Medicare, or even, you know, just regular wheelchair accessible vans and stuff.
Well, I think
So-
rideshare has definitely brought it to the forefront of sexual abuse
Yeah, that too.
daily.
Yeah.
And the part of the policy, and it's unfortunate, but I think as the years evolve here, when you buy a sexual abuse molestation policy, more times than not, you're taking on a large deductible just to even get the policy started. You might start with a $25,000 deductible. And the reason for that currently is because there's also a lot of fraudulent abuse claims, you know? And so, you know, as Paula, as the owner of her company, she might all of a sudden get sued for this. She's like, I wasn't driving, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, you can be sued for anything, you know? And so you're going to be spending, you know, maybe $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 in defense costs just to prove you did nothing. So these insurance policies right now are not written to, you know, defend and pay these large claims. A lot of times they're sublimits on a current policy you already have, or you're buying a standalone policy that's going to start at a lot higher premium, the large deductible. Luckily, knock on wood, to my knowledge, we've not had any real claims, or I shouldn't say real claims, and it's been a legit claim. We've had some fake ones where,
Substantiated.
yes, that's a good use of the word, yes, yes. I don't know how prevalent it'll be in the limo field. But if you're someone who has charter buses, and let's suppose you do field trip work for schools, that may be required on there. Some people don't realize that, and then the day before the trip, like, oh, we need a policy, and it's like, well, you know, it's $8,000 or whatever it's going to be to try to rush it for you. But as an example, I just did a sexual abuse policy, and it was a $2 million per occurrence in aggregate, and it was $12,000, and that was for it worked out to be like 378,000 bodies per year. It was a school bus company, so it had 180 days of school, average 30 people on a bus. And so that's kind of they came up with that figure. So it can be expensive. Just like anything else, the larger economy of scale, the cheaper it is on a rolling basis.
Also, I know Michael knows this, we're looking at package delivery to add to our repertoire of work. And I think it's something that you also have to let your agents know on your underwriter, because there could be some limits on package delivery, and Michael and I are working through that right now. If some of you were on the presentation a few months ago from ILLBA, they are trying to launch in Chicago, hopefully in December. And I think a couple of you have signed up with them, but it raised a bunch of questions and we're kind of going through it right now. But that's the kind of stuff you want to bring up and make sure that you're in the right place for that. Am I right, Michael?
Spot on.
Okay.
And some insurance companies might not let you do any sort of package delivery.
Right.
It's going to depend where you're at. What are you actually transporting? What's the value of that package?
Yeah. I'm asking ILLBA to put something together so we can share it with you
Okay.
guys. So when I get it, I'll get it over to you and any other agent that wants it. I'm happy to share it. I think we're trying to, it's a new world over here, so we don't know exactly all the details yet. And right now they're focused.
I did want to point out one more
technology.
thing that I made a note of and I didn't bring it up. We meet with our insurance companies on a somewhat regular basis. And we had a meeting probably about the last 60 days with a company called Berkshire Hathaway. Now, they're not a fit for everyone, don't get me wrong, but they do a lot of livery, new venture type stuff, trucking. They're a fit for a lot of people. And our marketing rep was in here and he was telling me that in 2020, 1 out of every 4 claims involved an unreported vehicle. So, some of these insurance companies were really starting to get burned by letting customers take vehicles off. They were still running the vehicles and having claims.
Why do they have to pay for that? If they're not active on the policy, why is the insurance company
Excellent question.
liable?
So that's a fantastic question. I don't know the details to every exact claim, but when you have, I don't know everyone on here, but a lot of people on this phone call have federal operating authority with an MC number. And there's an endorsement on the policy that basically states that any vehicle you own, operate, or control, the insurance company is on the hook for $5 million each and every claim you have. So because Tracy owns a vehicle, but suspends 20 of them, if she was operating one that was on the policy, the insurance company is still on the hook to pay that claim. That MCS 90B endorsement guarantees public safety. I shouldn't say guarantees, but they have coverage up to $5 million.
So I could be running 10 other vehicles that I'm not paying the active insurance on, and insurance is liable for that. Like how
Yep.
do we prevent that? How do insurance companies
So-
prevent that?
So I actually have a weird case, Michael, that
Okay.
I talked with another broker that somebody in a different market went and did kind of a long-term lease from Enterprise.
Okay.
And never added it because of he had, in addition to his symbol 7 on his insurance policy, he had 8 and 9. And while it was something that really should have been scheduled and should have been, placed under symbol 7 and item 2 on your commercial auto policy, because it was a rental vehicle from Enterprise, it fell under the hired and non-owned, and he never paid the appropriate premium that he should have with that vehicle, with that long-term lease. Now that's really fun. Now luckily he didn't, have any sort of incidents. Don't know how that would have handled if there would have been an issue, but it is kind of weird how some people read their policy and try to carve out stuff for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a unique situation, and obviously, I don't know all the details of, other than what you just said. But, you know, depending on how the actual policy was set up, there could have been automatic coverage for rental vehicles. Like you said, there's 7, 8, 9, there's 2 in this case. Was there 2 in this case? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, obviously, if we had a symbol 1 policy, that would take care of anything, but you're not going to see many symbol 1 policies out there anymore. Years ago, Protective was writing symbol 1 policies. We have a few one-offs here and there, but it's not normal to have a symbol 1 policy anymore.
Can you explain to people what a symbol 1 policy is?
Sure. So a symbol 1 policy is basically 2 words, any auto. So if Art has a vehicle in Nashville and it breaks down and Tracy's bus is in the area and picks him up, his policy would actually pick up her excess over Tracy's vehicle for hauling her people. So you don't have to tell us what the vehicles are. That's kind of a bad example. The premise of the symbol 1 policy was for larger operators to either pay on a mileage or reporting basis on gross revenue. So if you have someone who might have, say, 1,000 school buses, well, obviously they're probably rolling over 200 buses a year, give or take. So that's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. So they've vetted you. You are on a monthly reporting basis where you either report your mileage or your revenue for that month, and you just pay in arrears. Right now, you're paying, I'm buying you, I'm saying I went 25% down, and you're paying me in advance. Little more to it than that. I mean, the only, I know one person on this phone call who's been on symbol 1 policy for sure. Maybe a second one, but I know one for sure. And it's pretty clean. You actually know your exact cost. Not that you don't know it right now, but it's much easier to get, you know, if I'm doing a trip for, you know, $3,000 and my rate is $7 per 100, you know what your actual insurance cost is for that one trip. If you're paying $800 a month for your bus insurance, if your bus goes out 1 time or 20 times, you know, you got to figure out what the cost is per trip. On the revenue basis, you know exactly when you do something, what your cost is. It's very cash flow friendly, but unfortunately, it's just not around right now.
Could we talk a minute too about the addition of drivers to policies? I know I haven't been around that long, but I've been around long enough to notice that it seems to be taking a lot longer to call in and add drivers. Normally, it'd be a day or 2. We're seeing stuff much longer. Do you attribute that to more screening, stuff with COVID? I mean, because for us, if we have to wait a week to add a driver to the policy, that means that driver can't start work now, or we can't do our road test. So that holds us up on the road test and everything. So I'm just kind of curious as to your thoughts on what might be going on.
I know what's going on.
This could be a pick your excuse. It could be,
Okay.
you know, you send us information, we set it up for a day or 2 because we got time something else. It could be your insurance company has to see every single driver, and you know, but more times than not, we'll have underwriting guidelines, driver guidelines from the carrier. So if you know that they're between 25 and 65, they have no more than 1 speed ticket or accident, they're going to be approved. Now, if you get someone who's over 65, they're going to want to see their medical card if they're a CMV. If they do have maybe 2 accidents on there, they might want to say, do you have an action report that shows one of these is not at fault or both of them are not at fault? I have a few insurance companies that once you're with them, they only care about drivers midterm. I mean, at renewal time. Like depending on the size of your fleet, sometimes Philadelphia doesn't need to do any driver changes based on the size of your fleet. Some captive members, we don't have to update drivers midterm because they've also been vetted. They know what the driving requirements are. But another thing is that some of these insurance companies are in CYA mode. They don't want to, you know, let a quote unquote maybe sketchy driver, someone some activity on MVR get through, and then they have a bad accident, and you know they get concerned. I will say more often than not, when our customers want us to fight for a driver because they need someone to sit behind the wheel, and I'm calling them a driver, not a chauffeur.
Right.
Sometimes we can get it done, and what we find out is that that person either has an accident right away or doesn't show up to work. And, I think that's that part for me, at least what I'm saying, is kind of behind me. I would say probably early 2021, we were seeing just, hey, this person has a heartbeat, can they put him behind the wheel? That's kind of changed.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Right there. I think that was him, right? Yeah. You just called me? Okay.
Paula, can you mute him?
Yeah.
Michael,
Hey.
something that I don't understand is, working so closely with the airport and the city of Chicago and, like you said, when you have that MC number, that's federal and going to the airport is interstate, is who is allowing operators to have the below minimum when you're at the airport? It should be on their application that they service the airport, but
Yep.
yet they're allowed to have 350,000 when the minimum is 1.5 million. So does that fall on the broker, on the insurance company, on the operator? So that's the beginning
Yes,
part of
yes,
it,
and
and then
yes.
it's never enforced. So it's extremely frustrating.
So it is frustrating, and I think I've had a conversation with a couple of you guys here, but Tom, I want Tom to chime in on this one. Since you're Tom, you're very familiar with Minnesota Airport, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So for them, you have to send a vehicle list with all the vehicles to the MAC, correct? There's a Minneapolis Airport Commission.
Yep.
We don't have that here. So no one is overseeing this. Let me see. No one to my knowledge is overseeing this. But like different airports, like we have California, Minneapolis, there's even a small one outside of, what's the small Colorado, Vail? Eagle, something like that, one very small, but
Mhm.
they need to have every vehicle. And then they get a transponder to go to the airport and open the gates up or whatever you gotta go through. But no one around here enforces this. And I think, what's the gentleman's name who was talking about the 25-mile radius? Was that John Murphy?
Yes.
So,
Commercial zone.
yeah, so several of us here have been on quite a few conversations that I think we've received 5 or 6 different answers each time we do this conversation. And the sheer fact is no one is enforcing who's doing this, because I could go pick someone up at the airport, take them to Schaumburg, and that's gonna be within inside the commercial free zone. But if I pick them up and go to Aurora, that's outside the 20-mile zone. So who's tracking this? No one is.
Right.
No.
And it's really funny because I'm out here in Kansas City with Kansas City International, and a number of years ago, there was a news report about a shuttle company that was going and spoofing other companies' websites and getting very similar domain names. Like there was one company called Quicksilver. Well, they would get Quicksilver, shuttle.com without the C, and doing that. And when people started asking questions like, where's my car showing up? We found out who it really was. And then they started interviewing the airport, and they looked at the insurance policy that was given to the airport, and it was a AAA insurance policy. They don't do commercial insurance. So, I mean, there are legitimately companies that have made up fake insurance documents to give our airport to get their stickers and their permits to operate at the airport. I know they're not verifying any sort of motor carrier numbers or anything like that, because you can plug them in, to the Safer website. It comes up not authorized, or, they don't even have an active DOT number. So it really is a lack of oversight.
Very true.
But I think it still goes back to Tracy's question. It's written in the requirements for FMCSA. It's everywhere else. Yet, if you individually ask an operator, yeah, I know you have to do it at Logan. Thank you, Peggy. It's a major issue, because they will turn around and say a lot of times that, well, this is what the agent sold me. And my answer is, but it's your responsibility to know what the guidelines are. The agent is not regulating FMCSA. They are selling insurance. And it's still, I've had this conversation with Tracy. We've all kind of talked about it. we don't, right now, you're right, it's not being really regulated, but all we need is one accident near the airport or with the, that could cause this to really blow up in this area. So as much as, and then this is strictly my opinion, I mean, as much as people want to say, well, no one's enforcing it, so I'm going to go with $1 million, that puts me in a difficult situation. And some other operators who are carrying the full amount plus workers' comp and everything else to have to really decide who they want to work with or can work with. I try not to work with anyone that has lower insurance limits than we do. And there's a reason for that. But
So if staying on that point, Paula, so if you do hire or use an IO that has the below limits, what happens when there is an accident? So it's your customer, you're hiring an IO, they're only insured for 350,000. What happens when there's an accident?
I think it depends on whether it's their fault or not, correct, Michael? So if that driver if we gave it to the IO and they caused the accident, then it's one issue, correct?
There
I don't
are
think
a
it
lot
matters.
of different ways this
I don't think
can.
it matters who's at fault. Because
Okay.
There's also, there can be some uninsured, underinsured mowers in there as well.
Right, that's true.
But
Right.
if it was a perfect scenario, your IO might have $350,000 of insurance. If the
Mhm.
claim goes for 500,000, you would be excess over that for the difference, up to your policy limits.
Right.
And it doesn't actually matter because if the customer's in your car, they're gonna sue you. You then produce the additionally insured and your insurance company now goes after whoever additionally insured you for the primary, right? And then you're the secondary.
Which
Yes.
then don't you get dinged? Like, what are you doing hiring an IO with 350,000? So doesn't your insurance look at you and say, what are you doing? That's not legal.
It's not.
So some of our insurance companies do want to see copies of your IO certificates of insurance for that exact reason. Because it's a risk for them,
Right.
especially in this field, in this area specifically, because you guys, the limousine field is very high farm out work.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times we're going to ask to see
I
these
think-
IO agreements.
I think you need to take it though and spread it out to different markets. I don't know what the limits are in different cities like Minneapolis or, smaller towns. But I mean, we do a lot outside of Chicago and typically there's a lot of cases where they'll have lower limits than us. And it's just part of doing business. I don't know. People in your market, you could just not use them or, just do it, whatever.
I mean, we actually ran into an operator a few weeks ago that had only 200,000 and did not know that he had 200,000 for his limit until he sent me a copy of the certificate. And I think that that's kind of concerning too. It just goes to show you that most people or many people are not paying attention to what's actually being given to them. And it is their responsibility to look over the application and make sure they're getting the insurance they need. But it is touchy for us. I mean, I've actually had people say, well, that's your rule. That's why you're so strict about it. And I'm like, it's not really my rule. I constantly send out the fact sheet from FMCSA and say, this is what it says. I'm just telling you, if you choose to do it that way, does not necessarily mean that we should take that on. And some people have had to. There's such a shortage of drivers, so we can't fool ourselves. If it's one trip here and there, people are going ahead and saying, okay, I mean, we've had to do it ourselves. But as things get back to normal, we are going to be a little more selective on who we work with because we have to be. But I also think there's a confusion as to what, how do I say this? I hope it comes out right. If it doesn't, someone stop me. But many times when you talk to independent operators or small operators, they will tell you, well, this is what I was told. This is, when you question the limit, to ask them why, why did you go with such a low limit? And they say, well, the price was lower. Or they'll say, well, that's what the insurance person wrote. And that's what I went with. And I think that's the missing part of all these conversations is people don't take responsibility for the application, what's on it, making sure they agree, you know. I'm kind of a, other people know me, and I mean, I came from a world where contracts were king, and I look at everything, even if I don't understand it, I'll pick up the phone and ask somebody. And I'm not saying everybody has to get that diligent, but I think it's difficult to watch people push it to somebody else and say, well, that's what I got, and that's it. I hope I made some sense here, but I think it all comes back to making sure you know what you have, making sure that if you are farming out, that you're at least getting whatever, you know, you're getting yourself on their policy as additional insured, at a minimum. That's it. That's my 5 cents. I know.
It's also working with a broker that understands the industry that they're going to be writing. I mean, there are a lot of, you know, I can sit here and as property and casualty, I can write anything, but that doesn't mean that I should write anything because, you know, everything, because I don't necessarily know that industry yet. And I'm sure that there are some people that have gone to their local family agent that they've used for years going, hey, I want to open up a car service. What do I need to do? This is what the city tells me. And they're just, you know, the agent is uneducated. They're ignorant in what really they need in order to properly operate given the federal laws.
Yep.
And
So-
what about additional insured? Do we still have IOs that have an issue with their insurance company in providing additional insured? And do they really have to pay more to name you as additional insured, or is it unlimited?
That's insurance carrier specific.
Yeah.
Some will charge you a flat fee to have blank additional insured. Some don't charge at all.
And I know Progressive doesn't do Illinois, or the city doesn't accept Progressive, but I know that Progressive, it's $20 per additional insured for the first 5, and then it's complimentary after that. So
It
I
definitely.
mean,
depends
there's weird things
where.
like that based on each carrier.
But more of concern to me with some, well, maybe not the IO so much, but we're finding a few insurance companies out there don't want to do either a hold harmless or a primary non-contributory type wording. So there's a few quirky things that we're seeing right now that we didn't see in the past. And it could be these insurance companies have seen the reduction in capacity in the marketplace. From a carrier standpoint, they're also tightening up what they're offering. Now we do have some new insurance companies that come around. Incline is new this year. Trisura is new to the public auto field. So there's new carriers again out there. And you know what's good for Paula may not be good for Brian, and what's good for Brian might be good for Tracy. So just because you're buddies with me or Tom or Tim doesn't mean that's what's best for your buddy or for you. So ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, you're responsible for your own outcome and who you want to work with. I would implore you though to make some phone calls, you know, see what different about that offer to you. You know, why do you want to quote company A, or why do you want to quote company B? What sets you apart from the other broker? So be actively engaged in this process. I mean, for most of you guys, I'm going to think insurance is number 2 cost, maybe 3 cost. So, you know, put a little time and effort into that, and I think the outcome will be better than it could be if you just rely on someone else to do it for you. Be actively participating in the renewal process.
Is there any other questions from anyone?
I have something strange that happened. I submitted, actually Berkshire Hathaway, I submitted for workers' comp. And I got a rate which is very similar to what I'm paying now. It was like pennies difference. And then they wanted me to give them my full payroll numbers. And my office numbers are so much higher than my car numbers that they declined to quote it like we were fraud.
Are you paying your drivers? Are these contractors or no?
No,
actually
these are
employees.
employees.
You're actually employees.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so basically the office pay was so much higher. The driver's pay needed gratuity added to it, which doesn't fall under workers' comp. And they're, in many cases, they're working for the car company and the bus company, so I was really only showing half of their income. But in this particular company that I asked for the quote for, a lot of my office payroll was in that company. You know what I mean? So it was a much higher office number than a driver number, and I think they looked at it and immediately thought it was like fraud. And just declined to quote it.
Interesting. We can discuss that later on. It seems like I have a couple of things.
Yeah,
later.
whatever.
Okay.
I know we
I
didn't
don't need
to workers' comp today. And
Tell everybody to be careful. We're fine.
Did they give a
Just-
reason for the declining of the quote?
No, I didn't even get that far yet. The rate that they initially gave me, I was at 460, 448 or something like that, and they came in at they're like 15 cents per 100 less, which wasn't a big difference, but and they don't even break it down to show you what's employee and what's driver. So I mean, I'd be like,
Well, they should.
Percentage.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
what
supposed
percent?
to, because
I
offers
was
get
messing
separate.
around.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Probably if people are interested, we can probably make a topic of the workers' comp on another call. Because that could take a little bit longer to dive into.
Just tell them to be careful on each individual run, and I think you're okay.
And that comes from
Just-
endorsed by his. Okay.
No, that'll
Well,
work.
you know, there was a question earlier about, you know, why is it taking so long to add drivers or add vehicles to policies and stuff like that? And, you know, I know Michael had mentioned that, you know, we're busy as brokers and sometimes it takes a little time for us to get through, and, you know, the underwriters and carriers are busy. But also one of the, talking to a management person at a large insurance company on the you know, on the personal side, not any sort of commercial, but you know, they're a company you know of. When the pandemic hit, like anyone, they sent all their employees home and they were all working remotely. And of the 6,000, you know, agents that they hired in order to, you know, help people with their, you know, their home and auto and boat policies or whatever they had, they found out about half of them are unable to actually work unsupervised. So they let about half of their agents go. Now, well, that creates a backlog because now you only have half the staff that you had, and that's, I mean, they're facing the same sort of staffing shortages that every industry is facing. It's not, you know, it's not something that's unique to us, but that is also playing a role in it, in that, you know, you've got these people that actually did their jobs that are now having to do more than what they were before because of staffing shortages within the, you know, within the carriers themselves.
Thank you for sharing that, though. It is a very important point.
I think more importantly, as an operator, you look at the MBRs, you should be able to understand what they are. They know what the insurance companies are going to want. I mean, if you've got somebody with numerous speeding tickets, accidents with injuries, they're not who you want, because basically what's going to happen is they're going to have an accident. It's going to show up on your loss runs and your rate's going to go up. You know, all of the training, I agree, all the training is just so important, but the proof is in the pudding. When it's all said and done, loss runs are the key. And I'll tell you that from experience, because we've done all that training, extensive training, quarterly training. We've trained where we just spent tons and tons of money training, and sometimes questioned if it was even a good policy. We were training so much. Ended up having a situation with the driver that had a loss, and that loss is just haunting us. So
Yeah.
I think in the end that the whole thing is loss runs.
Well, you're right about the driving records, because I mean,
History is indicative of the future.
well,
Don't care
also,
what people say.
yeah, that part is true. But I'm also personally, I'm very paranoid. If it's not 3 years or more, I usually, you know, usually just pass them by, or I'll run it by somebody
Yeah.
like Arthur or George or somebody else who's had some experience, because honestly, we're getting so few applicants. But I also don't want to compromise the fact that if somebody has, two serious violations 5 months apart and less than 3 years old, that sends up a big red flag. And that would make it through a city license if it's more than 12 months old. They don't look at it. So you can walk in, get a city license if you have violations out there that are, even under supervision, but they're less than, they're older, they're older than 12 months. They don't look at those. They look at two violations in a 12-month period and safety training, or 5 violations in a 12-month period, no license at all, which is fine. We've actually had a few students that couldn't get a license because of that. But
in our case, we had many years, probably 10, 15 years with really no claims.
Yeah.
I mean, like
knocking on wood.
minimum, the biggest claim for a year might be a couple $1,000s. And suddenly you have one claim that's potential to be a larger claim, and your rates skyrocket and you're kind of fighting it. You're behind the 8 ball. The other thing that we may want to talk about, and I'm really not prepared to do it now, is with COVID and getting people to work, the cities has come up with a lot of programs that minimize requirements to get a chauffeur's license, criminal background checks, and there's things that they've changed which can affect us in a big way, at least in our market, in a big way, where you get somebody that comes in and they've got a criminal background and you decide not to hire them because of that. Well, you're really not supposed to decide, but you do the criminal background check, and the city's requirements have changed. They kind of conflict with a lot of what we have.
Well, we can actually put that in the next newsletter and make sure everybody sees it. Some of that, and I really want to get to the other updates before we end today. But just a short clip on that. Art's right. I'll give you a simple example. They're going to 3 years on criminal. So if your driver's had a DUI and it was 3 years old or more, they're giving them a chauffeur license. That does not necessarily mean that you don't have to put your policies in place. That just means they're eligible for a chauffeur license. They are
But now
trying
you go
look at
to
the-
insure them,
Huh?
and the insurance company won't. Now you go to insure them, and the insurance company won't take them, and you have to decline them because of that DUI.
Right.
And in reality, what it does, it puts you in a position to get sued.
Yeah, we should get our thoughts together on that, and we can talk to the city. But they did that across the board for all licensing, not just transportation. So, and it's mostly if there are felonies in there, there are certain felonies they still won't approve a license for. But things like maybe they had an ounce of marijuana on them like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's that kind of criminal stuff that they are lightening up on. So I'm not sure, it could still have an effect on what we do, but not to the extent that you might think. I mean, if there are, same thing with child support. If there's a child support issue, they're not getting a license. That's a state law. So rather than spend time on it, but I think I'll send it out, and if people have questions, we can definitely put it on the next one, or have someone come from the city and talk about it. But I looked at it several times, and I really didn't see anything that would stop us from executing our own stuff. It's because once they have a license, they're a free agent anyway. They can work for anyone. It's not something, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'll send it out. Usually I send out the video, and I'll attach the rules that recently changed on background checks. Making myself a note here. Okay. All right, can I move into the next topic? And first I want to
Let's
thank
go.
Michael and everybody else who chimed in. Thank you guys so much. Tom, always
you.
good to see you. And appreciate everybody's input. Okay, so a couple of quick things. I'll start with the association. So our latest and greatest updates is that you probably already saw in our news clips. If you're not getting our weekly news clips, please send me a message, or you can text it here, and let me know, and I'll make sure that your links are working properly. The board voted in October not to increase the dues for 2022, so you will not see an increase in dues. We are right now preparing the budget for 2022, and we will update everyone probably at the next well, it won't be the January coffee meeting, probably the February one. We'll actually spend a minute and go over the budget and let you know what we're looking at. We have been working on a website, a new website, and if I can get some more time, it will be up and running. It's already in test and it'll be up and running in December. What's going to be important is the board suggested that we do an annual survey of every person who is a member. So probably next week you will see a jot form survey where you can put in the latest information about your company, the vehicles you're operating, update your contact information, because once the website is up, we will be doing two things. One is we'll be uploading it with your current information. And also the new website will give you your own access to update your information about the company, the name, the vehicles that you have, etc. So I'm kind of really looking forward to that. It's going to be more self-service than our current website. We have to ask me to do it. And so look for that coming soon. And I think those are the major things from the association. There will not be a holiday party this year, but you will see some information in the coming months for an annual meeting. And we'll be looking for volunteers to get involved and help put the annual meeting together. And right now we're going to reach out. We're going to have a vendor meeting first and talk about dates and what kind of meeting, because we really haven't had any kind of face-to-face meeting since well, actually our last face-to-face was a coffee meeting in 2020, January 2020. And then after that, we haven't done anything. And we haven't had a annual meeting since 2019. So we're kind of really excited because 2022 is our 35th anniversary of the association. So this one we want to make fun. I don't know what we're going to do yet. We're digging up the archives and see what we can find. So look for incriminating photos and all kinds of fun stuff to come out. And if anybody wants to volunteer, we really would appreciate the help. It's not as time consuming as you might think, and we really could use the help from membership. Okay, that's it on the association side. But on the city side, for those of you who are operating in the city, you should have gotten your renewal packages for your livery in the end of October, early November. If you don't have one, then you should be calling Business Affairs right away to make sure it's going to be mailed to you. The city has been encouraging everyone to do their renewals by email, which simply means that you can do your renewal paperwork, attach your documents, and email them in. And then I believe you can go and pick up your stickers and everything once they approve it. But do two very important things. Make sure you carefully go through your renewal packet, because if you have a debt hold, meaning that you didn't pay your tax or file your taxes, or you have some outstanding debt, you cannot proceed with your license. And that will be on like the 3rd page, I believe. You must resolve all outstanding debt before you can apply for your license. The other thing is vehicle inspections are on the last page. If you have any vehicles that are requiring an inspection, you'll have an inspection date. Do what we do and put it on your calendar, because if you miss an inspection, there's a minimum fine of $350. They're pretty serious about you guys making sure you do your inspection. So those couple of things. So far, we've been collecting information from members about the renewal process this year or licensing. So if you have any feedback, we want to share it with the city. The whole electronic thing and sending documents in by email to start has been a positive thing with many members, because they don't have to make 2 trips down south. I call it down south, but to the south side to take care of stuff with. And keep in mind, there's some holidays coming up, and Christmas and New Year's fall on the weekend. So there will definitely, you want to make sure your licensing is done and all of that, because you will not, the last day of your licensing is the 30th is the last day they're open. Okay. So there's no running to any place December 31st to get your plates or your license. And what else did I have on here? One more thing. So there's been a few people that we've been talking to individually, and I'll definitely republish this again. And I published it last week. if you have any, or you know of any drivers or yourself or anyone who has any outstanding debt, there is a payment program that the city's been running that is much more flexible than the current program. It runs until, I believe, June of 2022. Simply put, if you owe the city money, interest, penalties, and everything accrue until you pay it. These payment programs are supposed to allow for 5 years of up to 60 months of repayment and a lower down payment. So if you have anyone, and by the way, every class we do for chauffeur licensing, we have at least 1 or 2 people that owe their money. So if I will continue to send it out, but I would encourage you to share it with everyone, because I don't believe that after June that they will offer anything this generous. Normally it's 50% down in 12 months to pay. So that's it. Those are my updates.
I have one thing to add to that with the city debt. We just finished an audit with the city of Chicago. And as it turns out, there's a tax that we're liable for on software that we utilize. And it was 9% if it's a software that is bought. If it's a hosted software, it's like 5.25%. The city finished their audit with us, and everything was fine except the software tax, which quite honestly, I knew nothing about. And as it turns out, it's been around for a long time. But they ended up presenting me with a $55,000 bill for software tax. And of that, it was like $30,000 in tax, $20,000 in interest. They were very nice. They waived the penalties. So we ended up going over all of this stuff and kind of looking at it and I ended up getting a decent understanding of what the tax was and how it worked. And what happens is you're taxed on development and software that's being delivered, but technical support where you can call someone and ask them questions is not taxable. So we ended up getting our tax from 55 grand. And when we were all done, down to like $12,000, and of that, I think 3,000 or 4,000 is interest. But it's still a big jump in the number. And we're going to come out with some guidelines and maybe have somebody from the city talk on one of our calls and explain exactly how this stuff works. Because they want to go back to 7 years and look at every software you've ever had, and they take like 2-year period and they kind of prorate based on that 2-year period. So you may have had software for 2 years that suddenly they want to prorate for the whole term that they're auditing you for. At any rate, there's ways to bring it down, and one of them is to have your vendors, your software vendors, label things properly. So that there's no question about what part is taxable and what's not. But we'll come out with more information on that in a future meeting. But it's something that you want to kind of keep on the horizon, keep your sights on it. Because in my case, it kind of snuck up on me. I mean, we're talking to the city all the time. We're talking to the Department of Finance all the time. I mean, we should have known about this, and yet we did not.
So with that in mind, we're gonna ask the board to review in a little more detail what I was talking about, and then we'll determine what the next steps might be. And part of that might be education, but I think we also need to have a little bit more thought around, is there something we should be doing to push back on this or what have you? Because now it seems that things are coming up in audits, and it depends on the auditor. It's also inconsistent, because I imagine other people have been audited. Some are having different questions asked of them then. So the audit process itself isn't even consistent, because this came up with art and other people have been audited and it has not. So not to belabor it, but it's definitely going to be on the board's agenda this month.
So
And,
Art, did you recently receive this audit, or is this something that started before COVID?
No, audit's been going on for a while. I've been kind of stalling it and doing what I wanted with it and kind of just dragging it along. But at this point, they just gave me the determination and basically came out with a $55,000 bill. And basically at that point, I started going through it further. I mean, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it because I really didn't think it was anything that great. But they basically go through and they just tax everything at 100%. And I'm still not sure, you know, in reality, I've got like $3,000, I guess, in interest. If it was more than that, it would be worth fighting it in court. I do have the option at this point to go to court. And I think that I'd have somewhat of a case in court because, you know, we're talking to the department, or we're talking to them. They didn't tell us that this was something that we had to do. They didn't. There's no place to go in the city to say, you know what, I operate a limousine service. What are all the taxes that I'm liable for?
Yep.
It's true.
Agree.
You know, it's kind of like you got to search through this shit and try and figure out what you're liable for.
It's trial and error.
It is traveling.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's an issue. So I think that, you know, I thought about, you know, the possibility of taking it to court and just fighting it and basically set some type of precedence. And it might be worth doing it because then operators that have the same issue wouldn't have it further back because it was proven that they did not give us that
So it's not
information.
just our industry, right? Like this would
No.
be every industry that
Everyone in
has
Chicago.
technology.
Everyone in Chicago. So as I said to Art offline, that's why I want the board to talk about it, because should we be reaching out to the, you know,
The restaurant association,
exactly. Should we be calling Sam?
hotels.
Right, Sam and the others and finding out, you know, what do they want to do? Plus, remember, we have an alderman who runs his own restaurants and stuff. So this is definitely not isolated to our industry. But what's interesting is that other people who've been audited, they're looking at websites and saying, oh, look, you've got all these cars on here. Why aren't they on your audit? Why aren't you listing these vehicles for tax? Well, we all know that most of us put vehicles that we partner with, not just the ones we own. So it raises so I want us to do a more diligent conversation with the board and figure out what we should be doing. And to Art's point, it might be a time to get some better education, but at the same time, we have to be careful we don't open a Pandora's box. But it's not cool when someone gets audited and then all of a sudden we find out there's a problem. And we're stumbling on these. And it's not the first time. So.
Well, I think the city's looking for money. And as they're looking at industries at this point, they're looking at every possibility, every tax you could possibly be audited for.
Right.
Because I've been audited before, and when this tax was in place, and it was never brought up before.
Yeah.
It was never said, you know, software, where's your software license? You're gonna pay for it. Never came up.
Yeah. So I think that's just all the more reason that we definitely want to put it on the next board agenda and have a conversation about it and figure out how do we want to.
And Art, you mentioned that the vendor should be labeling it correctly. What do you mean by that?
Well, for instance, in the case with me, my biggest tax was livery coach.
Mhm.
And I went to my, you know, they asked me for the bill of sale. I gave them the bill of sale. They saw my support payments going out. But what I did is I went back to livery coach and I told them, I says, you know, give me a breakdown. What are you charging me for support? What are you charging me for development? What are you charging me? What's your administration cost on this thing? I mean, so I'm paying you X amount per month, but what is it going towards? Break it out for me because that's what I need you to do. And they did break it out.
And what do you pay the tax on? You pay the tax on the support?
You pay the tax on development.
Everything but support.
Basically, their administration costs and their support staff translate to 80%. 80% of what I'm paying goes towards administrative and support. 20% goes towards development and software improvements and programmers. And based on that, I was able to take the livery coach portion of it and break it out to where I was only paying 20% of whatever tax they had on it instead of the 80%. The other thing that came into play is as they do these taxes, when they present it to you, they take a snippet of time and they prorate everything based on what you paid for those 2 years. And as they did that, there were things that they included in that calculation that in reality I only paid for the 2 years that they took that snippet of time. I didn't pay it any of the other years. So that came off the numbers. And it's just like I said, you gotta go through it and fight it a little bit and understand it and you have somewhere to go, somewhere to stand on it. But when they come in, they want to tax you on the full amount, which isn't really fair.
Yeah,
Right.
Just really quick,
yeah,
4 years ago, I got audited too, and same thing happened to me because maybe like 10 years earlier, we were audited for the tax. And this time, you know, they didn't find anything with the tax, but I was hit up with the software thing. Mine wasn't 55, it was probably like around 12, 13, you know, with all the fees and all that, but I think I got mine down to like 3,300 too, but that was same thing. They're like, oops, sorry, you know, it's been around, you should have known about it. So now I pay my fee every month with with the other tax.
And where do you pay it? Like, do they have a link?
On the same,
Chicago
once-
Business Direct, right?
the same place where you pay the, yeah, they have, there's two little things on there for me, one for the tax for the cars and one for the software tax every month.
Yeah.
But now I've been paying, I mean, I'm with Limo Anywhere and it's not that huge of an amount, but I'm gonna see if I can get it down to like 20%, like what actually goes for, like what Art said. I didn't dig that deep because mine's only about $9 and something cents a month. So I'm like, whatever. If it got up to like bigger amounts, I'd worry more, I think. But I am gonna like look into that to see if I can reduce it a little more too, but
every year that you've done it, it's gone up. The tax has gone up every
it
year.
started out at like 4% or something, and now it's at like 9.25%, I think, or something. I have it
Yeah.
written down, so I calculate it correctly.
How are you guys
Everything's
recuperating?
taxable.
I'm sorry.
GPS software is taxable, shuttle routing software is
Wow.
anything that's software related is taxable.
I think,
And for this year, I'm sorry, Paula,
Mhm.
but right now, Lynn, what you're paying is, you might want to do that. You're paying 5.25% on Limo Anywhere right now, because it's a cloud-based software.
Mhm.
Everything's gonna be at the 9.5% going forward.
Oh, yeah, no, I've been paying 9.5%.
yeah, she has.
Or 9.25%, something like
5
that.
point something.
Yeah,
I think Travis had a question. That's why I'm sorry I interrupted you, Art.
sorry,
Go ahead,
okay.
Travis.
I'm done.
Yeah, how are you guys recuperating on this tax? Are you charging an STC tax to the customer? Are you, what are you doing to kind of recoup on this extra expense?
Well, I mean, it's built into my rate. I mean, it's just happened now. So I don't know what I'm gonna do going forward. It isn't that much. I mean, they went back a bunch of years and they went back 7 years, and it's probably, you know, my tax was like, I think it was 6,000 or something plus interest. I gotta look at it again. So each year it might
$30,000
be-
is a lot of money.
Yep, it is.
It's not 30,000,
Right.
it's down to 12, but I mean,
I
It's a
know, but
lot,
that was
yeah.
you, and then you dig to the
that was
bottom
the
of it, but
basis, right?
for
Right.
anybody
That was
else
the
to get
first-
this, like, that's suicidal.
I think
Yeah.
Travis's
I
question.
mean, you like this kind of stuff. You
Yeah,
probably
right, yeah,
smiled
right.
when you got it.
You know what? Actually, the law didn't actually come into effect till September 2013 is when the update came in. So I'm still fighting with them to not charge me for 12 because the update didn't come till 13. And they're not dragging.
Yeah,
it.
I
You know
don't
what?
know
We
more
did
of it
this, we
than-
did that. They're full of shit.
And well, I think
They're just
there was
looking to collect
the
money.
variation of the law without getting it right. And then there was a year when they had to rewrite it because nobody understood it. And then after that, around 2015 or 2014, they had to rewrite it again because nobody understood what in the hell it was. I
Now, if
remember,
you pull up the law, there's 10 versions of it.
yeah, it's ridiculous. So
10 times it was updated and modified and re-scoped and.
but you know what, as to Travis's point, I mean, I think it's too soon to know if it's going to be a problem enough that people need to adjust STC or any of that stuff. But it's something we should keep out there because if it's for some people, it might be a lot if they have GPS software and software for buses and something else. I mean, we don't know what people have. So we'll
You gotta
definitely
look at
dive
what
in.
your IT spend is.
Mhm. Yeah.
you know? And it kind of makes you think twice about it too.
Well, yeah,
You know,
if you're
what you're
gonna,
doing and how it goes.
I agree. All right, anything else? All right, so our next meeting is December 21st. Hopefully y'all can make it. Thank you for coming. And you'll get the recording in probably tomorrow. And if you have
Do we
any
a
questions,
subject? Do
let
we have a
us know.
subject for the 21st?
Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving and thank
I
you.
take it to
Thanksgiving.
no.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Do
Bye-bye.
Hey,
Bye.
Paula,
Yes,
do we have a subject for the 21st?
yes. It's gonna be ransomware and all that stuff.
Okay,
I can talk to you about it offline.
okay. I was just curious.
Okay, yes.